We've heard this evening how South Africa is really getting a helping hand from China in trying to help ease the power crisis. We know that China is our country's biggest trading partner, and it's clear from our president's speech during the state visit yesterday of President Xi Jinping that we're not only economic trading partners, but friends as well. Ramaphosa said South Africa firmly endorses the One China policy. But can you really be friends when one party is so much bigger economically than the other? Perhaps you can. Let's take a closer look at SA-China relations. And I'm joined in studio by international law specialist Patrick Lukusa Kadima from Wits University Business School. Thank you so much for joining us in studio. I mean, it's great news. China has a huge amount of experience with overcoming an energy crisis. They've got lots of expertise to share. They've donated a lot of equipment worth 167 million rand, which is immediately going to help keep our power station, our police stations, our schools running when load shedding is in play. Great news, plus grants. So if we had to look at the relationship between China and South Africa, and of course it goes back a long way, Ramaphosa said that South Africa is still really grateful for the role and the support that China gave them in fighting apartheid. How would you describe the relationship? Is it more of a friendship or is it primarily an economic partnership?
Hi Sally, and good evening to your viewers. So in my own view, South Africa's relationship with China, I believe, is not only one of economic cooperation, it is one of friendship, deep friendship that has stood the test of time, friendship that comes, a very long way. Beijing and Pretoria share the same sentiments on many issues. They are always willing to cooperate on various issues that affect not only the two countries but also in terms of the region, as Africa, as well as globally. One other thing that I also think is that, if we watch carefully the statements from both our president on Sunday evening and the Chinese president, I think yesterday or the day before, there is that charm between the two countries, there is that sense of belonging and unity and understanding. And to a point where the Chinese president had called the president his friend, So I think the two countries have a deep mutual understanding of each other. Yeah.
Let's try and understand a little bit more about what our president means when he says that South Africa supports the One China policy. My understanding is the One China policy sees Hong Kong, which of course is part of China again, but also Taiwan as ultimately belonging within the People's Republic of China. Does that mean that we would perhaps support them if they decided to reclaim Taiwan? What does that actually mean when we say we support One China?
It's difficult to say at this point, but that's diplomacy. That's diplomacy at play, and if that's what the president had said, then it shows that his administration is ready to support, Beijing in its objectives, It's a difficult issue, that One China, policy and so on and so forth. It has been contentious. It's seen as by different schools of thought as probably China bullying different countries. So I do believe that there is a need for South Africa to take a stand sometimes in terms of its foreign policy, and if the president views that as the policy that South Africa is taking, then that's part of foreign policy.
I was going to say, because we've got a situation where we have a very generous friend sharing, donating, and also prepared to share their expertise. But at the same time, we have seen South Africa deny entry to the Dalai Lama a number of times. And of course, China sees him as an enemy. He's an outspoken critic of China. Does it put us in their debt? Does it make it difficult for us to speak out about human rights issues that perhaps we should be?
No, I don't think it does. I don't think it does. I mean, we saw the president on Sunday calling out Morocco, calling out on the issue of Palestine and Israel, and you know, our foreign policy should be anchored, you know, in speaking out about human rights abuses that happen, you know, be it at home or outside, because of the history that
Are we
the
consistent, though? Are we consistent, do you believe?
In terms of consistency, it's a difficult one to answer, you know. I mean, years back, one minister had even said that, do you want to anger your biggest trading partner by bringing in the Dalai Lama? You know, you do not want to do that. You know, if this country is your biggest trading partner, you know, there is a sense of trading carefully, you know, in terms of when it comes to foreign policy and where you stand. But my view on this is that, you know, our foreign policy should be always anchored in terms of calling out for human rights abuses and injustices because of the country's past.
We're also seeing that a number of countries, some of them in Africa, are very keen to join BRICS as well. Do you believe that this can be successfully navigated, and do you think that it could ultimately benefit Africa? Because, of course, there's criticism that countries like China are trying to come in and buy up large chunks of our natural resources. Do you think that this is something that can be properly managed?
Yes, I think it can be properly managed. As we have seen, the Chinese are explicit in terms of growing their influence in Africa, using their soft power, you know, either through donating. They were there during COVID, our toughest time. They sent masks, they sent medical equipments to African countries, you know, and one can even give the view that, you know, during your darkest times, that's when you see your true friends, you know, and I do believe that if the expansion does happen, you know, and certain African countries are included in the expansion, to a certain extent, it will drive trade in Africa. South Africa is a key player in the continent. China understands that. It does understand that for it to succeed in trade in Africa, it has to start in Pretoria. Otherwise, it will face challenges when it gets to wherever it's going, whether East Africa or West Africa. And the issue here in terms of Africa is there are tensions. There are tensions. You know, it's not going to be an easy ride for any African country to enter BRICS. You know, different countries maybe are skeptical about the expansion, you know. But I do believe that an expanded BRICS can help African countries develop. And the president had mentioned on Sunday that in terms of the African Continental Free Trade Area, that it is evident that there needs to be a way how these BRICS summits benefit that after, you know.
And just a final thought, you know, we might be a small friend. How do we make sure that we still stick to our principles of human rights? How do we leverage that diplomacy so that we are doing the right thing and not selling ourselves down the river, for example?
It's a difficult exercise. It is a difficult exercise, you know. There are trade-offs. It's diplomacy. There should be trade-offs. You cannot survive as an island, you know. There are certain trade-offs you need to make, and sometimes it doesn't come easy. You know, it never came easy, I'm sure, for Pretoria when they had to tell Vladimir Putin that you cannot come here. You know, there were trade-offs. That's why I think, and I've said that they had to decline, Pretoria had to decline France probably to come sit at the table, you know, because they knew that they had to trade off. Some things had to happen. So it's, I always tell people that diplomacy is not a very simple exercise for anyone. And I do imagine, even myself, if I was in the shoes of the Minister of International Relations or the President, I'll have sleepless nights in terms of, you know, deciding this type of trade-offs. So I do think, despite those trade-offs, there needs to, like I've highlighted earlier, there needs to be a firm and very firm foreign policy anchored in terms of human rights, because we cannot, as a country, discard those, and we cannot discuss those foreign in human rights values for probably, trading, Trade also involves human rights.
Yeah, so there's trade-offs, absolutely, and diplomacy, but there are limits. Yeah. Thank you very much. A very important perspective. That, of course, is international law specialist Patrick Lukusa Kadima from Wits University Business School.